Behind every locked door lies a story the world was never meant to hear. Welcome to Behind Bars TV, where we uncover the hidden realities of the world's toughest prisons, untold inmate experiences, and the systems built to contain them. From Supermax facilities to forgotten penitentiaries, we reveal the truth behind concrete walls and razor wire. This is not fiction. This is the world behind bars. Behind America's walls of justice lies a machine, silent, efficient, and worth billions. Every cell is a dollar sign. Every man inside is a number. And the empire built to keep them silent is one of the richest punishment systems in the world. The business of punishment. It started as a promise, safety, control, justice. But beneath that promise grew a profit system that transformed punishment into business. The more cells you build, the more lives you can sell. Each new Supermax meant more contracts. Cement, surveillance tech, meals, uniforms, electric locks, all feeding the American prison economy. By 2020, the corrections industry was worth over $80 billion a year. Prison wasn't just a place anymore. It was a product. In a world where profit demands expansion, control became currency, and freedom too expensive to afford. Building the fortress. When politicians promised no more escapes, no more riots, engineers answered with steel and silence. They built fortresses so advanced they made human interaction optional. Every inch of these prisons was designed to kill communication and profit from control. This isn't architecture. It's psychology built in concrete. Inside, there are no riots because there's no one to riot with. No weapons because there's no contact. No escape because escape means talking. Control had a new name, isolation. And America built its empire one cell at a time. The human inventory. In the old days, prisoners had faces. Now, they have numbers. Each man is entered, scanned, categorized, and costed. From the paper he writes on to the medication that dulls his mind. When you turn people into inventory, empathy becomes waste. Every breath in solitary has a price tag. $78 a day for housing, $5 for food, $25 for medical oversight, $2,000 a year for mental health monitoring. Multiply that by 80,000 inmates in isolation, and the silence becomes an $8 billion economy. The system doesn't need reform. It needs return on investment. Crime may drop, but punishment must keep growing. The psychology of control. Supermax prisons weren't just built to contain bodies. They were designed to dominate minds. Control isn't about bars, it's about belief. Inmates deprived of human contact begin to turn inward. They stop resisting. They stop speaking. They stop being. You don't have to torture a man if you can make him torture himself. Supermax design turned punishment into psychology, and psychology into an experiment. The billion-dollar cage doesn't just trap bodies. It manufactures obedience. Selling fear. Fear sells. And for decades, America has been buying. The more afraid we are, the richer the cage becomes. Every fear-driven policy, 3 strikes, war on drugs, mandatory minimums, became a stimulus package for the punishment industry. Every new law created new customers. Stamped. Incarceration equals revenue. Politicians won elections on promises of punishment. Corporations built empires on their words. And somewhere between law and profit, justice disappeared. The corporations of confinement. Prisons are built by governments, but run like corporations. Behind every locked door is a stock symbol. While one man serves time, another cashes the check. The companies call it corrections management. But their profits depend on bodies, not rehabilitation. The longer inmates stay, the more money flows. Freedom doesn't pay dividends. Confinement does. In 2023, the 2 largest prison operators earned $4 billion combined. Their biggest expense? Lobbyists, not counselors. Lobbyists of lockdown. Every cell built has a signature in Washington behind it. Private prison lobbyists spend millions shaping the laws that fill beds. They don't just build prisons, they build the need for them. bills promising safety were often written by the same hands that built the cages. Tough on crime became an investment strategy. When policy becomes profit, justice becomes marketing. The human test subjects. Inside, prisoners become test data. Psychologists record reactions to isolation, sleep deprivation, and sensory control. They call it behavioral management. The inmates call it living autopsy. Each report feeds new security technology. Infrared sensors, AI cameras, acoustic dampening. Each improvement means another contract. They study suffering like a science, then sell it as innovation. The security myth. Supermax prisons were sold as shields against chaos. But most who end up there aren't escape artists or serial killers. They're rule breakers, mentally ill inmates, or jailhouse informants. We built fortresses for ghosts. Isolation didn't reduce violence, it spread it inward. Self-harm rose. Officer stress skyrocketed. But numbers don't make headlines, safety does. As long as fear sells, truth stays in solitary. Exporting the empire. The billion-dollar cage didn't stay American. Now, the model has gone global. We turned punishment into an export. African and Latin American prison sites under construction. American firms provide the blueprints. Foreign governments provide the prisoners. The product is the same, total control. Wherever fear and funding meet, the cage follows. It began as a war on crime. It became a franchise on silence. The towns that depend on cages. In small-town America, prisons are the new factories. When industry left, incarceration moved in. Where jobs vanish, cages become salvation. In some counties, over 60% of residents depend on correctional payrolls. Tax revenue flows not from innovation, but incarceration. When your paycheck depends on punishment, reform feels like betrayal. But stability built on confinement is a fragile kind. When the cells empty, the economy dies. Whole towns now pray for higher crime rates because that's what keeps the lights on. The guards who break. The system doesn't just consume inmates. It consumes the people who guard them. You can't cage madness without breathing it in. Isolation is contagious. The longer you work inside, the more you become like the men you watch. Supermax doesn't separate good from evil. It fuses them. One study found twice as many guards die by suicide as those killed in the line of duty. The silence follows them home. Behind every locked door, there's another unseen prisoner, wearing a badge. The families left behind. For every man behind bars, there's a family doing time with him. Punishment doesn't stop at the cell door. It ripples through generations. Visitation in these prisons happens through screens or glass. No touch. No hugs. No eye contact without distortion. Even love is monitored, timed, and taxed. You can't measure the cost of silence in dollars. You measure it in broken voices. The whistleblowers. Not everyone could keep quiet. From inside the billion-dollar cage, a few voices began to leak. They saw the truth, and it cost them everything. Their testimonies exposed secret deaths, falsified records, and millions in ghost staffing. Guards paid for empty posts. In a system where silence is control, truth becomes contraband. Many were fired, demoted, or threatened. But they cracked open the first fractures in America's wall of secrecy. Empires don't fall from force. They fall when the silence breaks. The turning point. By 2020, the cracks had become visible. Whistleblowers, journalists, ex-prisoners, and psychologists united under one message. The cost of silence was no longer invisible. They called it control. But it was control that had lost control. In Colorado, one prison reduced isolation to 15 days max. In California, hunger strikes by inmates forced national headlines. For the first time, the system trembled, not from riots, but from conscience. The billion-dollar cage was never built to fall. But the walls are starting to listen. The money trail. Every empire leaves a paper trail, even the ones built in concrete. Follow the money, and the silence begins to speak. Over the last 2 decades, private corrections firms poured $45 million into campaign donations and lobbying. In return, they received billions in contracts, subsidies, and rehabilitation funding, even as suicide rates climbed 300%. It wasn't crime that built America's Supermax empire. It was capitalism. Journalists called it the punishment economy. Every fear-driven policy, every law and order speech, every televised execution was another marketing campaign for the cage. The more we feared chaos, the more we funded control. The death ledger. Behind the walls of the billion-dollar cage lies another economy, one that counts in lives. When silence kills, the body becomes paperwork. Whistleblowers later revealed that dozens of deaths went unreported for years. Some were marked heart failure. Others, natural causes. All occurred in rooms smaller than bathrooms. They built facilities that record every movement, except the ones that matter. When the cage becomes an empire, justice becomes a formality. The media storm. For decades, the empire thrived in silence. Then the cameras came. Once the light gets in, darkness can't hide. A former warden confesses, "We knew it was destroying people. We just called it policy." The public watched in disbelief, the padded cells, the 24-hour lights, the food delivered through steel slots. Hashtags trended. Hashtag end solitary. Hashtag prison reform now. For the first time, the cage was no longer invisible. Congress called emergency hearings. The Bureau of Prisons denied abuse. But the footage, the human stories, had already broken the wall. Empires don't fall when the people revolt. They fall when the people see. The rebellion of conscience. Reform didn't start with lawmakers. It started with conscience. Even inside the cage, people began to wake up. Movements began to grow. Inmates refusing food, officers writing public resignations, wardens testifying in defense of reform. When enough people inside say enough, walls start to crumble. In 2025, several states officially restricted solitary confinement to 15 days. A small victory, but historic. Empires collapse slowly. But even the strongest concrete cracks when humanity returns. The price of silence. Decades of silence built a billion-dollar empire. But in the end, silence couldn't sustain itself. The cage still stands. But the illusion of safety doesn't. It wasn't the prisoners who lost their freedom. It was the nation that traded conscience for comfort. And that's the price of America's billion-dollar cage. What you just saw is more than a story. It's a reality lived by thousands behind bars. If you believe in uncovering the truth, the kind hidden behind concrete walls and silence, then join us. Subscribe to Behind Bars TV and never miss a chapter in the world's most dangerous stories. Until next time, stay aware, stay informed, and remember, freedom and confinement are sometimes only a wall apart.